Hello, BookTube. I have a tag for you on this Wednesday. I didn't do a tag yesterday on Tag Tuesday, but I did a tag on Monday, so I thought I'd do another tag today, an attempt to right the wrongs, an attempt to balance the scales. And I have a tag here that I was just tagged in. Shelly Swearingen, the proud owner of a new miniature schnauzer puppy named Harry, just tagged me in this. This is the 1001 Books tag, which was created by Sandy at MsReads a lot, and is based on that big book. I'm sure you might have seen it at your library or at your bookstore, 1001 Books to Read Before You Die. Sandy is currently deeply ensconced in the previous version. There's a later version by Jim Mustich from Barnes & Noble that is different in a lot of key ways from the earlier version. It's the one that I've engaged with the most. I have it here in this little book room somewhere. It's amazing how easy it is to lose books in a room that is so small. And I also reviewed that book. If I remember correctly, I will leave a link to the review that I wrote of that book. I wrote it on the other side of the world, so you may not have seen it. And it's 1001 book prompts. Fortunately, it's not 1001 prompts, but it's all about sort of that broader scale bucket list kind of book thinking. The first prompt is 1001 lists. Do you follow any book lists? It can be a prize list or a challenge like the Rory Gilmore challenge. And here I want to point out, since we're in mid-November, that I not only don't follow any other book lists, but I write the only book list that's worth following. Every year on my literary blog, Steve Reads, which is located on my website, stevedonoghue.com, every year for the first 15 or 16 days of December, I give you one list at a time of the 15 or 16 genres in which I read, of the books from that year that were the best. And also two lists, worst fiction and worst nonfiction. Every year, for the last, I don't even know how many years, 20, 30 years, I have done a year's best and worst lists of all the major genres that I read. So business, self-help, that sort of thing, horror are not on there, but there are quite a few genres that are, almost certainly some that you read. And my list is definitive. I don't usually talk that way in all seriousness. Usually that kind of tone is for joking, for bragging. But in this case, I read more new releases in any given year in all of those genres than do the entire book departments of the major newspapers and publications that also put out lists at the end of the year. They have to farm their lists to many people in order to even roughly approximate how much the same number of books that I read. So this is one person giving you a list of the stuff that has come out in that year and ranking it. And that's coming up real soon. that is coming up real soon, just a couple of weeks. Those lists are going to start to unfurl on stevedonoghue.com. I will keep you updated as they happen, but it's going to be a wide variety of genres, starting with reprints, debut fiction, literature and translation, all of the genres, almost all of the genres. There's thrillers, there's sci-fi and fantasy, there's romance, there's mystery, there's historical fiction, there's science, and distinct from science, there's also nature, there's history, biography, fiction, nonfiction. So it's exhaustive. So that's the only list worth paying attention to. Then prompt number 2 is 1001 books. Approximately how many physical books do you currently own and how many e-books? I'm guessing here. I'm approximating. I'm going to do a complete count and inventory once Project Harrigan is done. Project Harrigan is my soup to nuts, stem to stern revamping of my library. And it is proceeding by crawls, a little bit here and a little bit there. But once it's done, I am going to do a definitive head count of how many books that I have. I think I know what I want. I want that number always to be at least below 5,000. And I think right now I have 3,500 print books. I'm pretty sure. Thereabouts, 3,500. I'd be amazed if it was a lot less than that. I'd be amazed if that was a lot more than that. And I have about 8,500 ebooks on various devices and on various libraries. Your libraries don't all talk with each other. So I've got iBooks, I've got Amazon, my Amazon Kindle, and I've got Nook, the Barnes & Noble Nook app, which reads EPUBs and also, the Barnes & Noble Nook app reads EPUBs. The Amazon Kindle app has access to the enormous Amazon Kindle ecosystem, including Amazon Unlimited. And iBooks has a direct connection. They are a direct owner of Project Gutenberg. So there's no fiddling around with canonical classics there, as you would, for instance, in Amazon's library, where you might get them or you might not. They may be free, they might not. They might have lots of highlighting, they might not. They might have somebody's handprint where somebody scanned ineptly a book in, Kenosha, Wisconsin, or whatever. Whereas with iBooks, they're connected to Project Gutenberg, so you can fill your iBooks library with carefully curated, very nicely done canonical classics and non-canonical classics, anything that's out of copyright. So they all have their strengths, which is why that number is so high. If you combine them all, you get around 8,500. Then 1,001 books read. Approximately how many books have you read in your lifetime? Do you keep track? I don't keep track. If I had to give a rough ballpark estimate, I would say it's around 40,000. Then 1,001 Arabian Nights. Have you read any stories from the Arabian Nights? Do you have a favorite? If you haven't read it, do you want to? My first reaction was, is this a trick question? But of course, Sandy doesn't know me, and maybe doesn't watch this channel, so you might not know that I have a weird reaction when people ask me, have you ever read questions, especially when it's something as well known as the Arabian Nights. I have read the Arabian Nights, yes. Penguin Classics. After years and years of doing abridgments to just give you Sinbad, they finally got around to doing a beautiful, big, 3-volume, unabridged English language translation. Lovely. Just wonderful. Then 1,001 flavors. Do you have a favorite food or flavor? I do indeed have a favorite food. It is the blessed potato in virtually any of its incarnations, except maybe vodka. In every other way, there's nothing I like better than baked potatoes, fried potatoes, French fries, potato pancakes, you name it. And mashed potatoes. Oh my, mashed potatoes with a sprinkling of salt and maybe a little bit of greenery on top. Oh my. The potato, absolutely. Which was given to the island of Ireland by the Blessed Virgin Mary in the year 500 AD. No matter what you may have heard from biologists to the contrary. Then let's see here. 1,001 pages. Have you read a book that is over 1,001 pages? Again, the Steve squint. Yes, I have read. I have not only read a book over 1,001 pages, I have read all the books over 1,001 pages. Is there one that you recommend and is worth the time? What is the longest book you have read? Well, the longest book I've read is either Reclaiming History by Vincent Bugliosi, his massive tome about the JFK assassination. That's 2,000 pages just in printed form, but has another 2,000 pages of notes on a disc in the back, which are narrative. The notes are narrative. They're not just, opsit or whatnot. So I would argue that in a perfect world, in a world where weight and design weren't factors, he would have just incorporated those notes into the text, in which case it would be 4,000 pages long. But it's either that or it's Zibeldoni, a book called Zibeldoni, Reclaiming History is actually very, very good. I don't agree with it. Ultimately and unbelievably, I don't agree with it. But Zibeldoni is just insane. It's not a book. It's a medical diagnosis. It's a product of someone who, for a period of his life, simply could not stop writing. Literally could not stop writing. So 100, 200, 300, 400 pages a day at a time when they were written with pen and ink. So Zibeldoni is probably the longest book that I've read. But there are lots of other books that are over 1,000 pages that are well worth your time. I jotted down quite a few of them here. Lord of the Rings, of course. War and Peace. Atlas Shrugged and Infinite Jest would fall under the heading of 1,000-page books that are not worth your time. So would The Stand by Stephen King. Atlas Shrugged, Infinite Jest, and The Stand are usually the only 3 books that people mention as 1,000-pagers that they've read. And it always makes me wince a little because they're 1,000-pagers that aren't worth your time. There's not 10 pages in any one of them that's any good. But I have a bunch of other things listed down here. Jerusalem by Alan Moore. That is definitely here in this room. I shouldn't go looking for these things. They're not all going to be within reach. But Jerusalem by Alan Moore is a very long book, but very much worth your time. The Dying Grass by William Vollmann. which I believe, if I remember correctly, was the very first book that I ever reviewed for the Christian Science Monitor here in Boston. Let's see here. God's War by Christopher Tyman, about the Crusades. Gigantic brick of a thing, but I'm no great expert on the Crusades, but it's the best book I've ever read on the subject, far better than Runciman on the same subject. Let's see here. Dreadnought by Robert Massey, not only historically gripping about the arms race that presaged the First World War, but also surprisingly funny. Massey understands in the course of his book that he's going to bore your eye teeth out of your head if he doesn't throw in some humor, and there's plenty of humor. Quite a few of these old Victorian, walrus mustachioed old black and white photo figures, quite a few of them have very good senses of humor, and it's a smart historian that makes you remember that. Also, I wrote down another omnibus that's in this room, the 5 Years Later saga of the Legion of Superheroes by Keith Giffen, who did the writing and the artwork, and also Tom Mary Bierbaum, which takes the Legion of Superheroes, a DC comic book of idealistic young teenagers 1,000 years in the future fighting evil and saving the world, saving the galaxy, and moves it 5 years into its own timeline when everything has changed. The galaxy is a darker place, the Legion has disbanded, everybody is cynical, everybody's older, and when I first heard rumors of the 5 Years Later story, I thought, this is going to desecrate everything that I loved. It turned out to be great Legion writing. Absolutely great Legion writing. And finally, after decades of fans begging for it, DC came out with an enormous omnibus, volume 1 of that saga. And one of you was kind enough to send it to me. I didn't even have to shell out money for it. Amazing how I can know that I want these things and not shell out the money for it. I don't know why that is. I'm perfectly happy to spend $100 on a 10-year-old Chromebook. But, for instance, the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, the Deluxe edition, is another thing that a handful of fans have been calling for, a big color omnibus forever and ever. Finally, Marvel got around to doing it. Not the original handbook of the Marvel Universe, but the Deluxe edition. And I know that I could get a copy of that hardcover. It's also well over 1,000 pages. I know that I could get a copy of that hardcover online somewhere for $50, and I don't do it. I know that I want it, and I don't do it. I will break down eventually. Oh, yes, also the Big Book of Science Fiction by Anne and Jeff Vandermeer. One of the big book series from Vintage, but very, very good. And it's well over 1,000 pages, and those are double columns. Who knows how long it'd be if it was single page? It'd be go on forever and ever. That is an anthology that has really grown on me over time. I thought it was only average the first time I read it and reviewed it. And I've really liked the balance of what the Vandermeers put in there ever since. More every time I go back to it. And the last thing that I'll mention is The House of Government by Yuri Slezkin, which is well over 1,000 pages. It's a prose nonfiction Russian epic about one apartment building, one Soviet-era apartment building, and all the lives in it, all the people in it, and all the way those lives reflect the greater happenings of the country and the world. And it's amazing. Absolutely amazing. It is a daunting task. It is a long, detailed book. It's as daunting as any other great Russian epic. And it is a great Russian epic. It belongs to be mentioned in the same breath as War and Peace or the Brothers Karamazov. And your paperback edition, your U.S. paperback edition in your bookstore, if you want to try your hand at The House of Government by Yuri Slezkin, has blurbs on the back from Tom Stoppard and Margaret Atwood and me. That's the only time I'm ever going to share a cover with such luminaries. Anyway, the next prompt. I could go on forever about 1,000-page books, but we'll go on to the next prompt here. 1001 buckets. Do you have a non-bookish bucket list? What is one thing on that list? I don't have many aspects of my life that are not bookish in some degree, except for the little schnauzer who is currently fighting with the blanket over on the bed. Aside from her, and she is completely non-bookish. I don't have many aspects of my life that aren't bookish. I do, however, have some bucket list items. They are bookish, in a way. I mean, what else would it be? But I mentioned for years here on this channel that I wanted to write about books in Iowa, Ireland, and India. I have very, very fond memories of living in all three places, and all three places are full of readers, and all three places are full of small newspapers that might welcome a book column by yours truly. And finally, in 2021, one of those things happened. I am now a regular book columnist for a couple of newspapers in small town Iowa. And it's great. It's a blast. It's how I spend my weekends. I write my column on the weekends, and I love it. I love it. And that just makes me, as pleased as I am, that just makes me hungrier for the other two items on that bucket list somewhere out there. There's got to be someone who knows a local editor of a local paper in a small town in Ireland or in India that might welcome a bookish column. That's got to be possible. For a while there, I'd gone so long with all three of those not happening that I thought maybe they weren't possible at all. But now that one of them's happened, I know the other two can't. So I guess that counts as a bucket list. I've expressed before on this channel my objection to the idea of a bucket list. There's a presupposition to a bucket list that I don't like at all, and that way too many of you indulge in, which is that you are just counting on 60 more years of life, when that is insane. Absolutely insane. And bucket list, that's what it means. The things you want to do before you kick the bucket. And you know when you're going to kick the bucket, so you know when you can time these things out. I'm getting myself all worked up. Let's just move on. The next one is 1001 numbers. Do you have a lucky number? Is there a story behind it? No, I don't have a lucky number, and let's repeat just one more time for the cheap seats. There is no supernatural element to existence. There is no supernatural element to existence. Nothing anywhere in the universe, in any part of life, the universe, and everything is supernatural. Nothing. There is no supernatural element to life. Okay? So while we're talking about lucky numbers and horoscopes and the stars being in the right place and alignment and whatnot, let's just remember that. Okay? There's no supernatural. There are no ghosts, there are no spirits, there is no afterlife, there is no karma, kismet, or whatever. There is no fate, there is no luck. It's just random chance. That's all. It sometimes breaks one way, sometimes breaks another. I guarantee you that the guy at the Atlantic City Casino who just has not been able to throw a bad hand of dice has a polyp on his large intestine. I guarantee it. It's just random. That's all. It's just the human brain that makes any such thing as lucky numbers, lucky items, lucky shirts, whatever. Anyway, I'm ranting again. Let's move on. Let's try and find a prompt that I don't rant about. Next one is 1001 authors. Do you have a favorite author and or genre? Well, yes, it's a straightforward question, but at least it's straightforward enough so that it won't provoke ranting. My favorite author is the Roman poet Ovid. And my favorite type of book is biographies. I love biographies. Just love them. I love the fact that they don't form a story. A biography does not form a story. Instead, you have to find the story. The author of the biography, unless it's, a political ideologue like Bill O'Reilly or Glenn Beck or whoever, or Boris Johnson writing a biography of Winston Churchill, unless it's somebody like that, where they're going in with a political point to make, and they're not really writing a biography, they're just using someone's corpse to second that point. Unless it's that. If it's an actual biographer, then they won't have a point to make. There won't be a story that they are trying to tell you. Instead, there'll be a life, and the life will have all kinds of stories in it. Oh my, I could go on forever about how much and why I love biographies. I love the randomness of them, the weird things that happen in them, as you know, because you're living your own biography. And hopefully you're writing it down in a daily journal. That would be nice. Let's see here. Then next one is 1001 activities. Do you have a favorite outdoor activity? I have two. Yes, I have two favorite outdoor activities. One is walking Frida, my little bean. Hi, baby. I said your name. Well, you're really cute. That's why I said your name. You're adorable. I like walking Frida. We do it all the time. It's the only freedom that I deny her, is the freedom to come and go as she pleases. So if she says at any point, for any reason, I feel like going outside, then I drop what I'm doing immediately and I say yes. I don't say, oh, in a minute. I don't say, oh, I don't feel like it. I don't say I've got a stuffed head. I don't say, well, we've got set times and it's not that time. I don't do anything like that. I just take her out. I love doing it. I love how engaged she is with the world. I'm drinking these days up from when she was 1 to she's going on 5 now. And I'm drinking these days up because in just a few years, it's going to feel like just a few minutes for me. She's going to get less and less engaged with the world as she's outside. Her eyesight will fade first, if I'm any judge from looking at her and living with her every day. Her eyesight will fade first. And then slowly but surely, she won't want to go out. Slowly but surely, she won't want to do the effort as much. She won't be as engaged. And I'll be there for all of that. but it's lovely to see now. Nothing misses her at all now, and that is just wonderful to see. But the other favorite outdoor activity is another one that I've talked about many times on this channel, which is the Brattle sale lot. The Brattle Bookshop here in Boston has an enormous sale lot outside the store. Thousands more books, not just a wheelbarrow or two of books, but thousands more of them that are outside in the elements. Unless it's actually precipitating, they leave the carts out. So the baking heat of summer, bitter cold of winter, I've been there in all of those environments searching for books that I don't need. So those two things, walking the beam and shopping outside at the Brattle. Then let's see here. The next prompt is 1001 book clubs. Not a prompt, but a question for the comments. Should I start 1001 book club with a book a month for a read-along? I think that's a wonderful idea. Absolutely a wonderful idea. If I don't know Sandy. I don't think she's ever left a comment on any of my videos. I'm not sure that that's ever happened. And her channel is new to me. Otherwise, I would immediately volunteer to be part. I would immediately volunteer to take part in this with her. It's a great idea. It'd be a lot of fun. Then let's see here. The next one is 10+1. Tag some friends. And Sandy tagged a lot of great booktubers. And I have also seen Shelly Swearingen also tagged a lot of great booktubers. So I'm going to tag everybody. I know that's a weak thing to do, but I'm going to tag everybody. This is a fun tag to do. If you're looking for a tag to do and you've watched this and you think you might have answers, feel free. Have that, because it's a lot of fun. But I'm going to wrap this up for now. That is a belated Tag Tuesday tag for this Wednesday, but I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.